Welcome to this video report on the 2022 Cotswold Historic Road Rally, a round of the HRCR Clubmans Championship. In this video, I'll give some insights into how Steve Head and myself, Graham Raeburn, finished in 4th overall, some hints and tips on how to avoid some of the mistakes people made, and how the performance through the event went. Firstly, thanks to Gavin and the team at Tavern Motor Club for an excellent event with a great mix of tests and regularities. And thanks too to all the marshals that stood out, not always in the nicest of weathers. With the Cotswold Historic being my first event this year, my goal was to try and do as well as possible, but predominantly avoid a really big mistake, which thankfully we did, and played a big part in how well we've done overall. One of the things I do when I get back from a rally, study the results in detail. Ian Mills on Rally Routes has put together lots of nice different views of the results that help. I'll talk you through a couple of them and how I use that to help look to see how we can do better and where the differences in performance arise. So firstly, top 10 positions after each section. And here you can see the first couple of regs, we don't appear in the top 10. I'll look at that in a bit more detail coming up. But as we progress, reg 3, test 2, test 3, we moved up into the top 5 and were there throughout the rest of the day, occasionally sneaking into 4th, most importantly, sneaking into 4th at the end of the day. As we look at the detail between how the regs and tests work and the times of different people, and we can have a look at that in a little bit more detail. Looking first at the regularity results, you can see regularity 1 we were 19th, regularity 2 12th, and regularity 3 we were only 11th. So the first three not spectacular, but noticeably the time differentials on these first 3 regularities between the top 20 are all around 20 seconds separating it, so the time differences were not too bad. Importantly, regularity 1, 2 and 3 were those that were pre-plotted the evening before, and we had lots of time to look at the speed changes and plan an approach as to how we were going to do on those. And I think this shows that a lot of crews, when they've got that level of time, are capable of doing very well and dropping fairly small penalties across 3-4 timing points across the regularities. Regularity 4 was our best. We dropped the lowest penalty, just 1 second over 3 controls. Again, 3 controls, not a big time spread on the penalties on regularity 4. I think the speed changes on that worked a little bit simpler than some of the other ones, and everyone seems to have done consistently very well. So although we were top, it didn't gain a huge amount of time over a lot of other crews. Regularity 5 and 6. Now both regularity 4 and 5 were plotted after lunch. Regularity 5 was a long one. You need to keep the concentration levels up. And here you can see the penalties. The spread was still around 20 seconds over the top 20. And we were down in 19th. We did have one section where we went wrong. We recovered. We only dropped 5 seconds at that control, but it just meant the whole section didn't flow quite as nicely as some of the others had done. And then we come to regularity 6, plot and bash, and here we can see the time differentials really have increased significantly. So the top 20 are now spread out by about 1 minute and 15 seconds. So much bigger time gaps. It's clear that adding the plot and bash element has really created a bigger challenge. Fortunately, we were one of the crews who managed to do things very well and dropped just 30 seconds, a third best, but still quite a long way behind the top 2. And one of the things for me Niall and Brian, who finished ahead of us on that regularity, they've been out doing a lot this year. I haven't, and practice definitely helps. So frequent events is definitely a big help to doing well when you're under pressure on a plot and bash regularity. Later on, I'll talk about the actual route of Regularity 6 and the issue that caused for, I think it was 29 crews. But first of all, a few other hints and tips of when you've got a plot and bash regularity. So one of the big challenges here is balancing actually creating and coming up with a route and plotting it whilst also trying to move, and balancing. If you're stationary, then obviously you're going to have to catch up, and certainly on this regularity the first timing point was just over 2 miles in. So if you were stationary plotting for too long, then you were going to be unable to catch up in time for that first control. So if at all possible, try and keep moving, even if you're moving slower than the required speed. If you can move and you can keep plotting on the move, it does help. The other big thing is it's a balance of how much time you spend plotting. So I was taking it a bit at a time. We were well past control 2 before I got the whole route down. I was happy to plot a bit ahead, then concentrate on timing for a little bit, then try and plot some more, then go back to the timing. So it's a constant shift through the first half of the regularity between plotting route. You don't need to sit 50 meters up from the start control and plot the entire regularity. You can, if you can manage it in stages. There are some bits where you're on the same road for 1-2 minutes, and that would have given you time to plot another section and still hopefully get some timing checks in. The other thing, if you're busy plotting and not got the capacity to do much on the timing, just tell the driver what speed to do and tell them they're on their own, and leave it up to the driver to try their best to manage. With good experience, a driver can do surprisingly well and keep your penalties relatively low, even if you've not given them any support. Now a quick look at the test times. Again, we featured quite well throughout. No fastest times this time round, hindered a little bit by the Escort's engine not being quite on tune and delivering and running as smoothly as we'd have liked. But predominantly we were nice and consistent, no big time losses. Our biggest downfall, first test we slightly overshot one of the cones, which cost us a few seconds, and then at the end of the day on test 9 we picked up our only cone penalty of the day, making a complete mess of the very last section, the split left to the finish. We managed to go straight on into the cones before splitting left, so time loss reversing and the cone penalty not helping us on test 9. But fundamentally the test results were pretty good throughout the day. Overall 5th quickest on tests. One thing that really stands out, if you look at the top 5 on tests and the top 5 on regularities, the top 4 crews are in the top 5 on both. The interlopers, the Stones, quickest on the tests, not so good on the regularities, finishing a bit further down the top 10. And then the other crew that sneaked into the top 5 on the regularities were Ian Crammond and Matthew Vokes, and they slipped down because their test times not quite so quick. So you can see that this event, to do well, you needed to be good at both the regularities and the tests. Doing well on one only and not so good on the other was not going to get you the best results. Now a look at regularity 6 and the element that caused people an issue with arriving early at a timing point. The reason crews, 29 of them I believe, arrived early was that they took a shorter route than the route instructions intended. The route instructions for the whole section included an instruction, do not use a national trail. Now, if you didn't know what a national trail was, look at the index on an OS map, but it's the footpaths and routes marked with red diamonds. And here we can see on the map that there are a number of red diamonds. Some of them are on footpaths, but some of them are on that yellow road. And that meant that when we were trying to get the shortest route from one point to the next, that road was out of bounds, because using it we would drive over a national trail, which is what wasn't to be allowed. Therefore, the correct route, as shown, was the green line. You went down to the crossroads, turn right, and then carry on. And that route, you got to the timing point approximately right if you were doing the right speeds. Whereas if you took the red route, which many people did, as that was the shortest route between the two grid references, you ended up going a lot shorter and therefore ending up at the control early and picking up the maximum 1 minute penalty at that timing point. My big hint with this, when you read a set of instructions and see something like that as a kind of black spot, potentially go through, look, scan the area, scan ahead, look for what those, A, learn what a national trail is, and then B, once you know it, look on the map, see where they are, and potentially mark them off. So put a line through them, make a black spot effectively on that road, so that when you come close to there, you don't end up plotting a route down it. I hope you've enjoyed this quick review and hints and tips videos from this year's Cotswold Historic. Thank you to Andy Manston of M&H Photography for the images of Steve and I in action that have been included. If you found the hints and tips in this useful and wish to donate to help fund future videos, then there's a paypal.me rallynav link available in the comments. Please feel free to add comments, questions, get in touch. Also have a look at www.rallynav.co.uk to find out more about the training services offered by Rally Navigation Training Services and the webinars where you can get more in-depth discussion and hints and tips on how to do well on events like the Cotswold Historic.